Alright, just give me the go.
We are on recording.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit the thing. Alright, guys. So, we originally were going to do Guild Wars when we did this, but that turned out to not be possible because the Guild Wars servers and logins are kind of fucked right now. There's some kind of server issue, and I don't know what it is. With that being said, I'm just going to play a random-ass game that I had on my fucking hard drive, and we're going to talk about something here for our Monday discussion stuff. We're going to try to get back into doing a discussion thing once a week, provided there's anything for us to discuss. So I will let you go ahead and get us started on this.
Well, welcome to Monday Mumbles, where we talk about anything from gaming news to not politics.
To not politics.
To not politics. But today we'll be covering, or at least talking in a general sense, to the Wizards debacle with the OGL.
And
the number of,
D&D 1 in particular, too.
D&D Begone edition. But we'll be talking about, in general, the kind of things that going on around it and some of that. I'll start off with this. Anyone who thinks that they have won, you haven't, because they have not changed any of the wording. Now, they're saying they're going to do a collaborative thing with people in the community, but that's BS. Don't fall for that.
Well, some people have won, and those are the people who've left entirely.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to fix the sensitivity here.
So that's field one. They're not going to change really much of anything. And if they do, they're just going to wait till they can change it later, because I guarantee you the part that doesn't change is the 30-day notice.
You think?
Even if they change everything else, they won't change that part, because then they can wait for people not to be paying attention, flip it, and then just screw people. And then they can just wait till they're in an advantageous position and they don't have to care. Because what people really need to remember is they didn't care about any of this until the numbers of, D&D Beyond subscribers started tanking.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
The only reason they have talked to people or backtracked to any extent where they're just giving kind of appealing language. This is like Disney saying, don't worry, customers, we'll give you free parking at some point in the nebulous future.
At some point in the nebulous future, yeah.
It'll never happen. It's something that they can say on an earnings report to make the investors feel good, gets them feeling comfortable, and then they can keep doing their poor decisions. So I don't see anything really changing, and anyone who actually trusts this company from this point on deserves what they get.
Well, they're kind of putting themselves in a bad position.
Now, from a purely mercantile way of looking at it, if you have something that you're working on and you don't care about actually owning it or any of that,
I can use it now. Shit.
Then feel free to publish under their new OGL just to get your name out there.
Yeah, but be prepared for them to still play that bullshit where they take your intellectual property.
Yeah. You do it with something that you don't intend on carrying forward if you just are that desperate with getting a reputation built up. That's the only thing I think it has any use, and I don't think they're really going to care that much going into the future about it. On the other end of things, well, you can see a lot of companies are now trying to strip the OGL out of their systems and scrub their documents and such.
Well,
go ahead. Well, go ahead, and then I'll continue.
Well, I was going to say, notably, Paizo flipped them a huge middle finger by not only giving a rat's ass about what they were claiming about the OGL, but by also announcing they were setting up their own open game license for anybody to use that wasn't even going to be considered their property.
Yeah, I'll go into that. You know what? Here's a good thing I think we can actually cover. A lot of people don't understand what the purpose of the open gaming license is.
That's probably a good place to pick up.
The whole point of the open gaming license is very simple. You don't need to publish under it. You could do it under a Creative Commons. The reason you would do it under an OGL is that you want people to make content that borrows from your material and is connected to your thing.
Yeah.
So why would that be important? Well, D&D is in the position it is because it created this massive ecosystem around it that kept feeding themselves under core books. By the way, you could look for the last decade on top sellers for books from Amazon and see the D&D core books for 5th edition. D&D the Wizards complaining is only them complaining they don't have a greater share of the profits while they're making money. It's like it's like someone eating half a pie and complaining they don't get to eat the other half of it. So, for example, let's say you created your own setting, right? And you want to kind of get that to popularize and feed people into your thing and keep them interested in that fan base, I guess is one way to put it, or that market. You'd want an OGL so that people could go, oh, I really like this setting. I want to make this thing, but I want to do this really niche product that you have no reason to as a company to do, but it serves in keeping people involved in your system. So people stay there longer and they continue buying things.
Yeah.
That is the point of the OGL. It keeps games alive. Because let's face it, we know two things on face value. Wizards cannot produce quality books.
Oh, well, they've proven that repeatedly recently.
They're already blown out by third-party publishers. They had to actually use third-party publishers like Cobalt Press to actually produce anything of worth. Then, on the other end, really, Spike?
Is your cat giving you trouble?
Yeah. On the other end of things, it allows niche products. Let's say you have your standard D&D, but you don't have the mass battle system.
Yeah.
You don't want to have your small development team for D&D content diverting to make something that's going to get a tenth of the usual sales.
I mean, why? Why bother at that point?
The OGL allows somebody to come in, go, I have a financial reason for doing this. I'm going to make a product that's good.
Yeah.
It still serves this tiny niche. Sure, I don't get a bite of that pie, but everybody who comes in because that guy keeps running games or those customers keep running games, and then they buy core books, gets me bites of that pie in a roundabout way. So that's the reason why people would do those things. Really, boy?
What is he doing?
Is he yelling at a wall for some reason?
We apologize, and we know we're recording, but there's certain things we can't help when you have animals in your house.
He's in one of his moods. So that's the purpose of an OGL, is that you want to keep your product alive. You want to give access to people basically to kind of put in that energy that keeps things going.
And for those who don't know, the open game license and a third party or homebrew even content is a lot of what helped keep D&D 5th edition alive, because it was basically anemic, the level of like actual in-house content being produced, and a lot of what they were producing was not good.
Well, they had 4th edition, which made a lot of people very angry.
Yeah.
And they tried to move from the OGL to the GSL.
Ugh.
I think that's the game service license. It's been a little while from what I remember. But effectively, it's close. What they're trying to do with their new OGL should just be called a game license. Yeah. It's not an open gaming license.
No, in fact, it's more closed off than it's ever been, I think.
So you have some of the big third parties that are basically moving there. Now, a lot of people I know will say, hey, the big third parties, they're moving, that's really got added to the tension and issues with Wizards. It hasn't. Wizards wanted those companies gone. So it's the reason they went with a scorched earth OGL like they did.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They were trying to screw those companies over because they didn't care about the tabletop market. because I believe they are trying to move to a largely electronic walled garden market, and they don't care about their older customers. In that, we have a couple movements. So we have Cobalt Press announced that they're making their own system.
Paizo's OGL got announced, and
they got the Paizo has the Orc, which is I wouldn't tell people to get too excited until they see the licensing agreement.
Well, yeah. Although I will say it sounds better. It's just in the fact that Paizo's not even putting themselves in like proprietary control of it.
They're doing the right moves for marketing. I think that's a good thing. And hey, anyone who's upset they're trying to make a buck off this,
yeah, well, they gotta do it somewhere, you know. And the other thing is, you have to bear in mind, like Cobalt Press, like you said, they're getting ready to do their own thing. Chaosium, I actually expressed some interest in that too.
Like I said, hey, keep an eye. The Paizo open thing is called the Orc, which is funny.
Yeah.
But keep an eye on it. Make sure when it does come out, if you're interested in publishing any of it or just knowing what you're dealing with, to read it. Because, you know, especially when you get morality clauses, those can be really, really odorous. And then Green Ronins announced that they're doing new modern and fantasy ages. I'm not particularly
fond of Green Ronin,
and some of their previous bullshit. So I'd caution people, at least to be somewhat cautious with their stuff. But even in that case, they're a better purchase than Wizards at this point. They're at least more reliable. So that's part of the what's going on right now. I do think the only reason they cared was not third parties, not people saying I'm done with D&D. It was the D&D Beyond, so basically dying.
I think that spurred it, but I also think it was the decline in sales.
Probably
because Hasbro itself may be pressuring Wizards of the Coast, because Wizards of the Coast is not exactly making the sales that they want them to for the profits.
Well, Hasbro has been having a decline in market share, and they've had some really big missteps. Now, they've posted decent profits, but you can see where it's slowed in some areas, and let's say things like they're having to do a lot of repair work on some of their properties. Like G.I. Joe is one that they basically allowed to get plowed into the earth.
I mean, they've made some returns on it with the just the figures and stuff, but IDW and Marvel kind of ruined it in any other fronts.
Marvel was not helpful, but man, IDW did that.
IDW screwed it over almost as hard as they did Transformers, which definitely does hurt the products.
And on the whole topic, though, one thing I'm going to say is I literally think they're moving to an electronic. So they will do anything they can to placate the D&D Beyond subscriber base.
Which is not working. I heard that they've already shed 40,000 subscribers.
Yeah. I still think what they're going to do is they're going to do something just PR enough to try to calm the waters in the long run. And then within it, about the end of this year, they're going to start making their move towards the virtual tabletop they've been trying to. Because even if they don't retain, like they don't get any of those people back, they're still going to make more money off that service. So
yeah, well, especially since with this D&D 1 bullshit, they're banning any homebrew or any shit like that unless you pay the top tier fucking subscription fee, which is $30 a fucking month, which fuck you.
Well, in the long run, they're going to be more profitable because of that. But
they got to maintain an audience for that too, and they ain't thought that far ahead.
Well, that's their problem. I'm saying, like, in the short term, I think they'll be more profitable. In the long term, I don't think it'll be as good as they think, but that small 15% that pay all the money, they'll do okay for a while. What I think ultimately is going to be the success of all this is the ripping of D&D out of the the tabletop hobby as the preeminent, all-controlling 800-pound gorilla.
No, I agree with that. With so many people abandoning it for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or looking at some of these new systems that the big support boys like, Cobalt Press are doing, that is good for actual tabletop gamers. Because this is not for the people who just want to sit on their smartphone and play some knockoff fucking like D&D where they just click a bunch of shit on their phone and look at some numbers. You know, this is for actual tabletop players that these people are working on this shit.
Yeah, and I can also probably throw up a couple suggestions for people. Like if you go to the RPG site, anyone who's interested in finding out about other games, you'll find out of just about every OSR or D20 style game you could ever want.
Yeah.
I am not going to actually give any of those because I don't see a point to it. What I will do is I will suggest a couple other options people could look into, and I'll start with one of my favorite companies as soon as I can get the thing to actually
What?
It's gonna be one of those days, isn't it? Cover for me just a sec.
Okay.
I'm trying to get I'm trying to get the prices up. There we go. I had to find it. So I'll start with an old favorite of mine, and it is Palladium Books.
Yeah.
They do Rifts and a bunch of other games.
You can list them off. It's Rifts, which is sci-fi, kind of vaguely fantasy elements, depending on where you're playing it. And then they have Palladium Fantasy, which is an outright fantasy setting. They have Dead Rain, which is a zombie apocalypse kind of setting. And then they have a whole bunch of other smaller systems and settings that they do.
So, to give people an idea, I'm just going to go with two of the settings that they have. We have Rifts and we have Palladium Fantasy. So, if you're looking for something that's fairly cheap and inexpensive to get into, you can go to the Rift site, or the Palladium Bookstore. Palladium Books Store. Good Lord, Josh. And you can get a soft cover of the Ultimate Edition for Rifts for $34.99. Or you can get the 30th anniversary, which I'd actually almost suggest. It's about $50, but it is the older version of the Rift books, and I only suggest it because it has a little bit more in terms of a rounded presentation. So there's a little bit more like monsters and armor and vehicles. But if you want to get the Ultimate Edition for Rifts, if you're interested in the older version of the setting, they have a softcover book for $34.99.
Right.
It's a bit of a gonzo setting, but it's based off a very... originally, Palladium came off of the AD&D stuff, so it has a lot of things in common. So it uses D20 for combat. The skills are percentile. You can find out more. On the fantasy side, again, you can get a choice between 3 versions. You have the 2nd edition fantasy book, and there's a softcover version for basically $32. A hardcover version of the 2nd edition book for about $40. And then you can get a reprint, of the 1st edition of Palladium Fantasy in hardcover for $55. Now, if you want a simpler version of the system, I'd go with the 1st edition. You're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to get a decent amount of quality. If you want to go with the 2nd edition, you're going to get classes, everything from martial, basically the things you'd see in D&D, magic, psychic. Then you're going to have a bunch of different spellcasters with different types of spells and ways they do things. A decent selection of monsters, a good selection of equipment, all the basic skills that you need to run the game. It's almost an all-in-one book,
Yeah.
And if you want to expand from there, the only thing you really need, in my opinion, for fantasy is their monsters and animals, because it adds a bunch of monsters and animals. It's like a monster man. So, let's see. The other thing is Savage World. It's a more pulp style game. It's by Pinnacle Entertainment. They also, if you happen to like their system, so if you try out Savage Worlds, it's got a bunch of different stuff that can cover, from fantasy, modern, superheroes. There's little expansion books.
Yeah.
They also have riffs. So if you like their system better, you can still, if you like riffs, run riffs with their system. And I've heard a lot of very positive about it.
Oh yeah, was that Savage Riffs, I think it's called?
Yeah, it's called Savage Riffs. And I've heard nothing but good. And if you want fantasy, they have a fantasy companion for the Savage Worlds, and they have Savage Pathfinder. So there's a good selection there. And the only other thing I will make as a suggestion would be, let's see, I think it's Age of Sigmar, or Warhammer Age of Sigmar.
Oh yeah, that is surprisingly good.
It's a D6 system that has larger than life, kind of like super powerful fantasy heroes. So you get kind of an all gambit. So you get something that's kind of like AD&D. You get a pulpy game, and then you got the like high-powered one. And you can check out the RPG site. They have a lot of good selections or suggestions on more traditional D20 or aka D&D style games from there.
All right.
Let's see. Then I'm mumbling.
It's all right, dude.
I honestly will say this about the whole situation. This is a wound that Wizards did not need to inflict on itself, but I don't think it's one that they care too much about. So if you're a person, you're out there, you're enjoying the game, you've been enjoying D&D 5th edition, I'd say give some other things a try and see what works for you. Because one thing I want you to really think about is mega corporations and corporations in general are not your friend. They don't care about your experience. They don't care about your well-being. They care only about your money, and they see you as an obstacle to that money. What's important is you find something that you enjoy, that's something you find fun, and you can get in a decent quality. So I'd say experiment. There's a lot of options out there. You don't need to continue to pay a company that hates you. And I mean overtly hates you. And also, before you get your hopes up with any of these other companies, read what they come up with first. Just always be incredulous.
Yeah.
And if people in the comments want, we can always do another one where I go more into depth about different game systems and be able to give better suggestions. I just don't know how interesting that would be for anyone.
Guess it depends on everybody individually.
So if anybody wants that or is curious about certain games that I've mentioned, leave a comment, and maybe next time I will go into a slightly deeper teardown of that. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
Is there anything else you can think of would be my initial question.
Well, outside of the D&D Scorched Earth tactics, there hasn't been a massive degree of news, honestly. I could always say something controversial.
Controversial, huh?
Yeah.
Like how so?
Like, people would, curse you for the rest of your remaining life kind of thing.
What the hell are you talking about?
Gotham Knights is not as bad as people make it out to be.
I don't know if that's really controversial, because I have seen other people say that. I just think there's a thing right now where people are just, upset or whatever.
I can understand why.
Well, because WB Games has put out a lot of questionable stuff that they've piled on.
Yeah.
A lot of weird DLC or microtransaction stuff. So.
Okay. Well, I think we covered the topic fairly well.
Alright, well then folks, this will be the end of this one. These discussion ones are not going to be too long most of the time, unless there's something just really, really huge we got to talk about. But we're going to start posting these recordings occasionally on Mondays, depending on what's going on and what we got to talk about. But apart from that, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you another time.
Monday Mumbles, yeah.